I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, and I just need to get it off my chest. I don't know who I'm really telling this to, but it feels like it might help to just say it out loud. Well, type it out. I guess I should start from the beginning. So there I was, married to Josh. He was the perfect guy, or at least that's what I thought. We got married young, like way too young if I'm being honest. I was 22, he was 23, and we were madly in love. At first, it felt like we were invincible, like nothing could tear us apart. We had so many dreams together, so many plans, and for a while, it was all going great. We bought a house, got a dog, went on cute little vacations. Life was good, but after a few years, things started changing. It wasn't like one day it all fell apart or anything. It was more like it just slowly unraveled. We started to drift apart, not because we didn't love each other, but because life gets busy, and we just kind of fell into routines. He had his work, I had mine, and sometimes we'd just pass each other in the hallway without saying much more than, "Hey," or "Good night." It's weird, but that's just how it happened. I guess I started feeling lonely. Not in a, "Oh, my husband doesn't love me" way, but more like a, "I need something more" kind of loneliness. It wasn't his fault. He was a good guy. He wasn't cheating, wasn't neglecting me. He was just there. And I was there too, but we were like two roommates who happened to sleep in the same bed. And I hated it. I hated feeling invisible, like I wasn't really a priority in his life anymore. One night, after a long, boring week of work, I went out with some friends to a bar. I wasn't looking for anything, I swear. I just wanted to have a drink, laugh, and forget about the same old routine. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, But then I met Matt. Matt was different. He was funny, he was charming, and he was easy to talk to. He wasn't even my type, honestly. He wasn't tall. He didn't have the bodybuilder physique that a lot of guys I was attracted to had, but there was something about him that just clicked. He made me feel like I mattered, like I was interesting. I wasn't just Josh's wife. I was Emmy, We talked all night, and I know I should have left, should have just had my drink and gone home. But I didn't. I let the night carry me. We ended up making out outside the bar, and I remember thinking, this is wrong, but it feels so right. I felt wanted, and that feeling, it was intoxicating. I hadn't felt that in a long time. So, one thing led to another, and we ended up in his car. I know I'm sure you're already judging me, and I get it. I don't blame you. But in the moment, it was like I didn't care. It felt like I was finally alive again. Like I wasn't just someone's wife, but someone who could have their own adventures, their own secrets. I don't even remember how we ended up at his place, but the next thing I knew, we were in his bed, and it felt like the world had stopped. I'm not going to lie, it was amazing. The attention, the compliments, the touch. It was all so new to me. I hadn't felt this desired in years. The next morning, I woke up and freaked out. I couldn't believe what I had done. I felt dirty, I felt ashamed, and most of all, I felt guilty. I immediately regretted everything, but I also didn't want to go back to Josh. Not because I didn't love him, but because I didn't want to face the fact that I had betrayed him. I avoided Matt after that. I never saw him again, and I tried to push it out of my mind. But of course, it wasn't that easy. That one night had changed something in me. I started to think about it more and more. I became obsessed with the feeling of being desired, and I hated myself for it. But at the same time, I couldn't stop thinking about how good it felt to be with someone who saw me as more than just a wife. It wasn't just the physical stuff. It was how alive I felt when I was with Matt. I didn't know if I could go back to the way things were with Josh. But I also didn't want to throw everything away. I was stuck between guilt and desire, and it felt like I was slowly falling apart. That's when it started. The secret. The part of me that wanted more. The part of me that didn't know how to stop. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but I started meeting up with other guys. Some I knew, some were strangers. And each time, it felt like I was pushing my limits further and further. And each time, I hated myself more and more. But I also couldn't stop. The guilt kept eating at me. And the worst part, I wasn't just cheating on Josh. I was cheating on myself. I didn't recognize the person I was becoming, but I couldn't pull myself out of it. I was addicted to the attention, to the thrill, to the idea that I was someone special, someone who could make things happen on her own. And every time I went back to Josh, pretending like everything was fine, I felt like I was dying inside. But the worst part came when I realized that it wasn't just about the sex or the excitement. It was about the emptiness I felt in my marriage. It wasn't Josh's fault. I wasn't unhappy with him, but I was unhappy with myself. And I didn't know how to fix it. But then, things started getting out of hand. And that's when the truth came crashing down. I knew I couldn't keep going like this forever. I kept telling myself, just one more time, and then you'll stop. But I never stopped. It was like I was addicted to it, and instead of dealing with it, I just kept going. Every time, I promised myself that I'd hold back, but nothing ever worked. I kept searching for that validation, for the feeling of being desired, to feel like more than just a wife, to feel wanted, beautiful, free. And then one day, after months of no contact, Matt reached out to me again, just a simple hey in a text message. I knew then that everything would change. We started texting, and within a few days, we met up at a bar. I knew what this would lead to, but honestly, by that point, I didn't care. When we ended up back at his place, it was like the first time all over again. I couldn't control it. I told myself it was a mistake, that I couldn't do this to Josh, but in that moment, I felt like I was losing myself. It was like a snowball effect. One mistake led to another, and I couldn't stop anymore. When I came home that night, I was filled with this emptiness, this horrible guilt, but also something else. I didn't know how to deal with it, because all this time, as I kept hiding my actions from Josh, I realized something. I wasn't just betraying him, I was betraying myself. I had become a slave to my own need for attention. Every new person, every new moment where I felt desirable, I lost a piece of myself. I thought that if I met someone new, if I got that confirmation of being wanted, I could avoid the pain in my relationship with Josh, but it never worked. All these men, I couldn't even count them. They became these blurry figures in my life, temporary fixes that gave me the illusion of being special. But what did I really have? Nothing but emptiness, self-hatred, and helplessness. The worst part was that I started to view these encounters as just part of my life. I never realized how many there had been. Over 100. I lost track of the numbers. They weren't just one-night stands or random flings. They were moments when I convinced myself everything was fine, because someone wanted me again. But what was left after all of that? Nothing but loneliness, regret, and the sinking feeling that I was out of control. When Josh found out, his face went pale. He had never asked me about my past, about my exes, or how many partners I'd had before him, and I never really counted them either. I just kept looking for what I was missing, but when he asked, I felt my whole world collapse. I gave him the number, and he couldn't believe it. He just looked at me, and in his eyes, there wasn't anger, there was something else. Disappointment. Not because I cheated, but because I had kept all this from him. I had kept him in the dark for so long. I knew I couldn't hide the truth anymore. Couldn't you just have told me? He asked, his voice trembling. That felt like a punch to the stomach. I didn't know how to explain why it happened. I didn't know why I had gotten to this point. Why I created this facade, this version of myself that wasn't even me. You don't get it, Josh, I said, barely able to speak. I was lost. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know how to stop. The days that followed were the longest of my life. Josh and I didn't really talk much after that conversation. He went to work, came home, and we passed each other in the hallway like strangers. The silence was deafening. I kept telling myself that maybe things would settle down, that this was just a phase, and that we'd figure it out, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. I felt like I was walking around in a fog. Every time I saw Josh, I was reminded of everything I had ruined, everything I had betrayed. I wanted to reach out, to apologize again, to make him understand, but I couldn't. What was there left to say? I had already confessed. I had already broken the trust. There was no going back to what we had before. And then, the worst thing happened. I hadn't heard from Matt in months, but one day, out of nowhere, he reached out to me. It was just a simple text, something along the lines of, "Hey, how have you been?" And it felt like a slap in the face. I shouldn't have responded. I knew that. I knew the moment I saw that text that I was about to make another mistake, but I couldn't help myself. It was like my fingers were typing on their own. I replied, "I've been okay. You?" And just like that, the door to the past was wide open again. We started texting, and it felt like I was living two lives. On one hand, I was this woman trying to fix her marriage, trying to earn Josh's trust back, and on the other hand, I was sneaking around, texting Matt like a teenager with a secret crush. I kept telling myself that I was just being friendly, that I wasn't doing anything wrong. But I knew I was lying. I wasn't just being friendly. I was still looking for that feeling, the one I'd felt when Matt had made me feel wanted, seen, alive. Matt suggested we meet up, and I agreed. I don't know why. Maybe I was just so desperate for some validation, some sense of control over my own life. I wasn't ready to face the reality of my marriage yet. I wasn't ready to deal with the consequences of what I had done. I didn't know how to stop running. We met at a bar, and when I saw him, it was like the floodgates opened. That feeling, that excitement, hit me again the moment he smiled at me. The pull was undeniable, and for a moment, it felt like I was free again. But freedom is a lie when you're running away from something, and deep down, I knew I was just avoiding the truth. We talked, laughed, and after a few drinks, we ended up back at his place. I wish I could tell you that I stopped myself, that I realized how much I was hurting Josh and how much I was destroying myself, but I didn't. Instead, I let it happen. We went to his bed, and for that brief, fleeting moment, I forgot about everything. I wasn't Josh's wife. I wasn't the woman who had destroyed everything. I was just someone who felt alive again. But when it was over, I was flooded with guilt. It was even worse than the first time, because now I knew what I was doing. Now I knew I was choosing this instead of fixing my marriage, and that realization felt like a punch to the stomach. I couldn't escape it. When I got home, I expected Josh to be asleep, but he wasn't. He was sitting on the couch waiting for me. The look on his face was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something that told me he knew. "How was your night?" he asked, and I could hear the edge in his voice. It wasn't accusatory, but it wasn't friendly either. I froze. The moment of truth had arrived. I had been avoiding this, but there was no way around it now. I could feel my pulse racing, my stomach twisting into knots. "Josh." I began, but the words caught in my throat. I didn't even know where to start. How could I explain this to him? How could I explain to the man I loved that I had betrayed him yet again? He looked at me for a long time, his expression softening just a little. "I know what you've been doing," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. I felt like I was about to implode. How? How did he know? "I found the texts," he continued, "and I saw that you met him again." "Matt." His voice was calm, but his eyes were full of hurt. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm so sorry," I said, my voice breaking. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I've been a terrible person, Josh. I don't know why I did it. I wish I could take it all back. I wish I could just go back to when everything was okay." Josh shook his head. "It doesn't work like that," he said, his voice flat. "You don't just get to erase what's been done. I wish I could forgive you, but I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can trust you again." I could feel my heart breaking all over again. This was it. This was the moment when everything fell apart for good. I had no excuses. I couldn't justify what I'd done, and deep down, I knew it was too late. "I love you, Josh," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I don't want to lose you. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." But he didn't respond. He didn't have to. His silence was louder than any words could be. The days after that conversation were unbearable. It felt like I was living in slow motion, walking around in a haze of regret and sorrow. Josh didn't leave, but the space between us was wider than I ever thought possible. We didn't fight, but we didn't talk either. Every time I tried to reach out, every time I tried to apologize again, it felt like I was just reminding him of what I had done, of the damage I had caused. And that's when I realized the worst part. The guilt had taken over everything. The more I tried to fix it, the more I felt like I was just making things worse. I hated myself. Every single day, every time I looked at Josh, I saw the pain in his eyes, the hurt that I had caused. I couldn't change it. I couldn't undo the betrayal. And as much as I told myself that I loved him, that I wanted to fix things, I couldn't stop the gnawing feeling that maybe it was already too late. I wanted to scream. I wanted to apologize, to beg him to forgive me, to tell him how much I regretted everything. But I couldn't. I couldn't put him through that anymore. I had already taken so much from him. His trust, his peace of mind, and his love. What was left for us? What was left to salvage? One night, when I couldn't sleep, I found myself staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head. The nights with Matt, the lies, the secrets. It felt like I was drowning in my own choices. I kept thinking, why did I do this? I thought about the first time I met Matt, how he made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. But then I thought about Josh, about our life, about how, despite everything, I still loved him. I was still here, wasn't I? But what if it wasn't enough? What if the damage was irreversible? I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't know if it was even possible. But I couldn't walk away. I couldn't just give up on us, no matter how messed up everything had become. So, I decided to do something. I made the decision to show Josh that I was ready to fight for us. It was the only thing I had left. I was going to prove to him, to myself, that I could be the woman he deserved. The next morning, I woke up early, before Josh did, and I sat down at the kitchen table. I wrote him a letter. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't filled with perfect words, but it was honest. I told him everything I had never said before. I told him how sorry I was, how much I regretted my actions, how much I was hurting because I knew what I had done. But I also told him that I loved him. That part was the easiest thing to write. I wrote that I was committed to making things right, not because I wanted to fix it for myself, but because I loved him and I didn't want to lose him. I knew I didn't deserve his forgiveness, but I was going to earn it if he'd give me the chance. When I was done, I folded the letter and placed it on the kitchen counter where he'd see it. I wasn't sure what would happen next. Maybe he'd read it and walk away. Maybe he'd get angry. Or maybe, just maybe, he'd see that I was trying, that I wasn't giving up on us. I was standing in the living room, trying to calm my nerves, when I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. Josh was awake, and he was holding the letter in his hand. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't bear to see what was in his eyes. I read it, he said, his voice low, and I don't know what to do with it, or with you. My heart sank. I wanted to say something, to tell him how much I understood how much I had messed up, but the words wouldn't come. I don't know if I can forgive you yet. Josh continued, his voice shaking slightly. I don't know if I can trust you again, but I'm not going to make any decisions right now. I need time. The relief I felt when he said that was almost overwhelming. Time. That was all I needed. A chance to prove that I could be the woman he wanted me to be, the woman I used to be, before I let everything spiral out of control. I understand, I whispered. I'll wait, Josh. I'll wait as long as it takes. But I'm not giving up on us. I'm not giving up on you. He didn't say anything else. He just stood there for a long moment, holding my gaze, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. He wasn't sure yet, and I didn't expect him to be. I had given him so many reasons not to trust me, not to believe in me, but I had to prove that I was worth it. I had to prove that the love we had could survive this, that we could survive this. As the days went on, we started talking more. It was awkward at first, but slowly the silence between us started to ease. We still had a long way to go. Trust wasn't something you just got back. It was going to take time, patience, and a lot of work. But I was willing to do whatever it took. I knew there were going to be hard days ahead, days when Josh would doubt me, days when I'd doubt myself. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had something to fight for. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. I still don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Josh and I will make it. But I know this. I'm not running away anymore. I'm not hiding from the consequences of my actions. And if there's any chance that we can rebuild what we had, I'm going to take it. Because sometimes you have to break everything down to realize what's worth saving. And Josh, he's worth saving.